I think he did the right thing for himself and for the country. It was clear that it was time to move on.
Our president will address the nation about his decision to step down as a candidate, and he will talk about not only the work, the extraordinary work that he has accomplished, but about his work in the next 6 months.
Biden's bowing out has reshaped the race for the White House. Harris's campaign says they've raised more than $100 million since Sunday and signed up thousands of volunteers. But is this renewed enthusiasm from the Democrats enough to carry them to victory in November? The former chair of the Republican National Committee, Michael Steele, joins me now. Michael Steele, it's good to meet you. Thank you for taking the time today.
It's good to meet you. It's good to be with you as well.
I should point out to a Canadian audience watching, you were the former head of the RNC, but you're no fan of Donald Trump, and you are a supporter of Kamala Harris. So let's start there. How does this switch at the top of the Democratic ticket, assuming it becomes official, which looks likely, how does that change the race in your view?
Oh, it changes dynamically on so many levels, largely because you had so much, frothy fervor within the ranks of the Democratic Party around the debate that the president gave about 3 weeks ago, that it really caused an internal drag. They couldn't move off of that moment. And it finally culminated with the president last weekend saying he would step down. So what does that do? It elevates the vice president. It puts a whole new spin on the narrative of this election. You're now talking about a potentially historic election of the first African-American woman to the presidency. And it is one of those dynamics that, quite honestly, Republicans really don't have a counterplay for. Their whole operation has been built around running against Joe Biden. Now that's not the case. So you're already beginning to see some of the members of the party who are not necessarily thrilled about J.D. Vance, the senator from Ohio, as the choice for Donald Trump, sort of, second guessing that, as well as efforts to try to go after Kamala, but missing widely with misogynist and racist under and overtones to their comments. So you can see already how much of a change in this race in the last 36, 48 hours has occurred.
Yeah, it's interesting because Tim Alberta with The Atlantic has done some really good reporting on the Trump strategy to take on Biden. He's old, he's infirm, and all of these things, and that has gone out the window. And as you say, not even just racist undertones, overtones, the DEI comments about Kamala Harris. Speaker, what does this say to you about the state of things with the Republicans right now that Speaker Johnson and others had to urge members not to go making racial comments about the vice president at this point in the race?
Well, they know how damaging it is going to be, and it is. It's one of the issues that I had to confront as national chairman in 2009, 2010, and 11. Because that thread is one that the party has had a history of pulling on from time to time, going all the way back to the 1930s, the John Birch Society in the 50s, Richard Nixon, President Nixon's Southern strategy in 1968. And in fact, I gave a national speech as national chairman saying we would no longer do that Southern strategy appealing to white conservative men would be over because the country was demographically as well as politically changing. So the speaker knows that, others in the party know that, but they've unleashed the kraken, if you will, of vileness and ugliness that has come to symbolize a lot of what we've seen coming out of the MAGA world in this particular space. And it's going to be hard to kind of put a cap on it, as we just saw at J.D. Vance's first official event after the convention. The state senator stood up to introduce him and said, "Look, if we don't win, it's going to have to take a civil war to fix it." Really? This is politics, people. This is not that, it's not that stressful. Have a latte, chill, But that's the vim and fervor that you see coming from MAGA right now, and it's going to be hard for them to contain that narrative.
So what does that tell you about where this campaign is going to go? Because Maggie Haberman had some analysis in the New York Times that a female opponent draws out the worst in Donald Trump in terms of his ability to stay restrained, and she has a pretty good window into the psyche of the former president. Do you think he'll debate Kamala Harris on ABC on September 10th as originally scheduled with Joe Biden? And how do you think that might go?
That's a good question. You hear a lot of the braggadocio from Republicans going, oh, Trump can't wait to debate her 2-3 times. I'll be surprised if this guy comes up once against Kamala Harris. Look, the narrative's set. You've got the prosecutor and the felon on a stage. How do you think that's going to turn out? It's just not going to go well when questions are asked about the 34 convictions, the impending cases that the president has. January 6th, his decision that he's already articulated that he would pardon the insurrectionists from the January 6th insurrection. You've got someone who's going to prosecute the case. In fact, that was one of the big things that actually drove Democrats to move off of President Biden, because they didn't think he would be able to prosecute that case. So if I'm Donald Trump, I'm sitting there thinking long and hard, do I want to get on the stage? Because you're not going to get away with the stuff you may have been able to get away with Hillary Clinton. And certainly you were able to get away with Republican men who just folded like a cheap suit and capitulated to your abuse of their spouses and their family members. That's just not going to happen here. And so I would put it this way. I'll be surprised, pleasantly surprised, if there's a debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Would welcome it every day with my popcorn, but we'll see.
All right, so I have to ask you, in your experience, in your capacity as a former head of the Republican National Committee, there is a lot of noise on the Republican side right now that they will file lawsuits in a bunch of states to stop this transition at the top of the ticket, to stop Kamala Harris from getting access to the tens of millions of dollars that have been raised for the Biden-Harris campaign. Is there merit in that, in your view, or is this sort of nuisance litigation designed to just take up time and build a narrative?
Well, I'll take your polite term for it, nuisance litigation.
Okay.
There's stronger language that I could say, but I won't because there is no basis for this. Number one, and folks need to understand this, the Democrats haven't nominated anyone. There's not been one vote cast for at the convention for a nominee. Yes, there have been 14 million votes cast in the primary process, but those votes were for delegates, not actual. See, we have a weird system in this country. We don't actually get to vote for people. We vote for surrogates on behalf of people. That's the Electoral College. You don't vote for the president directly. You vote for electors who then go to their state capitals and cast a vote. The same is true with this convention process. The primary is about electing delegate to go to the convention. A candidate amasses those delegates, goes in. If he gets the right number, he or she can win on the first ballot. So what's happened is that first part has taken place. Now, what the DNC has decided it would do before Kamala Harris, in fact, got moved into the slot, was to have a virtual selection process because of the state law requirements in several states that certain aspects of this process of voting for these delegates has to be completed. Their convention, because of the Olympics falling later than it normally would, that process could get interrupted. So the bottom line is there is no legal basis for the Republicans to dictate to the Democrats how they should select their nominee, when that should happen, how they use their money. This is all nuisance. It's all cray-cray. I don't understand it. A lot of us shake our heads and go, why are you doing this? But here we are, because that's the only outlet they have to sort of say, oh, gee, what do we do now?
I want to ask you one last quick question, Michael Steele, before I let you go. In about 2 hours and 45 minutes, Joe Biden is going to give a speech I think a lot of people are keen to hear. What do you think he needs to tell Americans and Democrats in his address tonight?
You know, it's not so much what he needs to tell them. I think Joe Biden right now has an opportunity to say how grateful he is to the nation, how grateful he is to the party to have given him the honor to be their nominee. But he also recognizes this moment requires someone different. And he thought in the first instance it would be him, but he's realizes it isn't. And so I think for him, this is his way of helping to push Kamala a little bit further down, put a little bit more wind in her sails towards the fall election, and for the nation to, to look at him and see not just the president, but an incredibly gracious and gifted politician who recognized, like George Washington, our first president, that when it was time to move on, it was time to move on.
Michael Steele, it was good to meet you. I watch you quite often on MSNBC. It's good to have you on this show. That's former RNC Chair Michael Steele, who also hosts The Weekend, which airs 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time, Saturdays and Sundays on MSNBC. Thank you, sir. Good to talk to you.
Thank you so much. Good to be with you.